Welcome to our webinar on precast and prefab technologies. We are very happy to see you today and to be amongst eminent experts from this technology, from this industry. I am Pratap Padode, Editor-in-Chief, Construction World and founder, Construction Council, First Construction Council and ASAP Info Global Group. I will not be visible today because I just felt that there are such eminent experts out there. I think it's better that you see them and we will make them talk. So let's get on with our webinar. I think there is a lot to be discussed and shown to you. And this is a technology that we've all been wanting to see. So just to give you a little brief, this webinar is sponsored by our partner, Tekla, a Trimble solution. First Construction Council, a non-profit trust since last 17 years, has the following board of governors. Before I introduce, let me show you the screen of the board of governors. Delays are an inevitable part of our projects in India. I think we waste nearly 1 trillion rupees a year on account of delays in projects alone. The world has also been susceptible to delays, and even a company like Apple was no exception. So just to share with you the slides. So coming back to the board of governors, this is the first Construction Council board of governors, and we have eminent people like you can see on the screen. And even Bandra Worli ceiling, 10 years to build, cost overrun from 400 crores to 1600 crores. Don't we all know that? The world construction industry, which is also $10 trillion worth, but 90% of the projects late or over budget. So it's not India's story only, it's world over the same problem. And like I was saying, even Apple headquarters delayed by 2 years, over budget by $2 billion. Now, Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest tower at 828 meters, 200 stories tall, of which 160 stories are habitable, built up area of 5.67 million square feet, used 330,000 cubic meters of concrete and completed the external building in 5 years. Even the concrete was able to be pumped at a record-breaking height of 605 meters. So obviously we have seen the whole technology change to a different level over last 15 years. And here's the world's tallest modular construction building, which was completed in Singapore in 2019. This comprises of 2 towers of 40 stories each, of a height of 459 feet or 140 meters, and over 50% of the construction was carried out in the factory premises and has yielded an on-site waste reduction of 70%. So that's Clement Canopy in Singapore. But just before that, Tide Construction from London was trying to get this 101 George Street. Again, 2 towers, one of 44 stories, another of 38 in Croydon, London. And they were trying to get this record, but now Clement Canopy has beaten them to it. And while this project is not yet complete, it's nearing completion. Here you can see the twin cores were completed using slip form construction prior to the module installation. So with this background, let me now introduce you to our panel. We have Mr. Harsh Pareek, Regional Sales Director, India and SAARC Trimble Solutions, Mr. Alakesh Roy, Managing Director, Zamil Steel, Mr. P.V. Prashanth, Chief Technology Officer, Shapoorji, Pallonji and Company.
Hi.
Mr. M.V. Satish, Director and Senior Executive Vice President, Buildings, Minerals and Metals, Larsen and Toubro. Mr. Nejeeb Khan, Country Head, Katerra. And Mr. Ujwal Shetty, Director, BCC Precast India Private Limited. This webinar is being organized by ASAP Info Global Group under its flagship brand Construction World and is sponsored by presenting partner Tekla, a solution from Trimble. I'd like Mr. Harsh Pareek to say a few words now. Mr. Pareek will give you a short presentation.
Yeah, is it visible, Pratap?
Yes.
Thank you, Pratap, and good afternoon to all my co-panelists as well as everybody who's attending this webinar today. It's a great thing to have at this point of the time, and given us the opportunity to talk on the modular construction. So I'll just give a brief intro of what is all about modular construction and what Trimble as a major solution provider is doing in this direction. So the picture you see is more from a conventional practice, but this is what probably we want to look at ourselves when we talk about modular. And this is one of the pictures probably which is more mechanized, which is more process oriented, like can we basically move our construction to more in a modular way. So I think few facts Pratap just elaborated. This is the broad level comparison when you talk about construction and other businesses. When I say other businesses, which are more related to manufacturer-centric businesses. If you look at for a particular project, we have typically seen the construction productivity over the period of time goes down, whereas the other process-oriented or the manufacturer-centric businesses, they continue to gain advantage because of the processes. And primarily, these are the figures and facts which are not a secret anymore, that we talk about wastage of material, cost and budget overrun, how basically our workers are unproductive at the job site, and how much rework basically takes place in a typical construction project. So what is the way out to think on it? Because construction is not something which is started today. It has been happening for so many years and it will continue to move on. But to mitigate some of these challenges and come out from this, what could be the option we can look for in our industry to make it more? So for that, can we actually look at the modular construction to reduce some of these risk elements which we have seen, which is primarily on the time, cost overrun, rework, wastage. And I personally feel this is certainly a way forward we can think of. And there are data, like the data I have showcased earlier, that how much is the rework, how much is the wastage, how much is the these are the data which have found in various studies, especially when the modular construction has taken place over and above this conventional way. So if you look at it, there is a greater certainty in our schedule, in the delivery of project, and that has found like 89% of the projects are scheduled to be on time. The cost certainly on the manufacturing-centric models, they deliver greater certainty in terms of the overall cost, and the cost basically goes down. Similarly, we are facing a big problem of skilled labor, and that's where the modular construction certainly provides greater advantage and reduce the overall dependency completely on labor, certainly because it is more mechanized, it is more machine focused, and more process oriented. and of course, the quality in terms of the overall project and materials can be much better controlled in a modular construction techniques if it is adopted for a particular project. So these are some of the data, and also this type of a construction amounts to greater environmental benefits, and because it all comes the way we basically work, the type of materials are being used. So everywhere we see there is good amount of savings in terms of the overall material used, and how basically the construction progresses over the period of time and in different phases. Whether you talk about steel, cement, sand, or for the sake of saying like formwork is a fantastic way to look at it. Like we use reusable molds here, and we can continue to reuse them from project to project, and it reduces the amount of wood basically we use. So this is another way to look at how we can contribute to a lesser carbon emission and a better sustainable projects to be on the greener side of it. So what Trimble is doing, being a software and hardware solution provider, Trimble has been working consistently on developing a process which is primarily for the construction industry. And we call this process as more constructible process, and this is having a foundation from three core elements, which is constructible, connected, and content. So anything we try to, the first and foremost step of this process of creating a virtual model, and in a very broader way I can call as built. What is going to be built on site needs to be built virtually, which can connect the various stakeholders of the project, be it an owner, be it a contractor, be it a designer, and a blue collar and white collar. So when we say it's like office versus with it and site, both are connected. And this virtual environment is so content rich that we don't even lose smallest screw which needs to go on site. So Trimble is committed to build the process which is not only about design and detailing centric, but it is more about connecting your design to the site and how basically you can more and better manage labor, material, equipments, and how basically the commission of the project happens. So you can maintain your safety standards, your quality assurance measures and everything. So we deliver solutions which are software, hardware, coupled with our services to cater to the entire gamut of the solutions, which is right from concept to commission, and every phase of this thing is available. And when we talk specifically with respect to prefab and precast, the core elements comes into three portions, and our philosophy there is very clear that you model it, you fabricate, and you erect. And in the modeling stage, we are talking about somebody sitting inside the office, create a conceptual to detailed design, and that's what most of the people focuses on today. But what this constructible virtual model does, it integrates your data with your production environment. So whatever the type of machineries for this precast and modular panels, columns, beams, anything we talk about, we are linking our solutions with any of the machineries which directly takes care of these inputs. We talk about logistic planning, and finally we talk on the erection, site sequence, and site installation. So technologically, we are trying to create solutions which takes care of the advantage of the rich data with the help of IoT and artificial intelligence and machine learning kind of techniques to ensure that construction industry moves forward towards more as a process-oriented delivery of the project than just becoming a fragmented delivery mechanism. So let's look at these things. These are 4 different phases we look for, like how the overall cost spread works, and design, detailing, fabrication, logistic management, and erection. And if you see, most of the time when we are talking about terminology in construction called BIM, it primarily focuses on design and detailing side, which if you look at the overall cost, adds up less than 5% of the overall cost. So that even whatever the efficiency we plan to bring in these 2 factors, the overall impact on the project cost still remains minimal side. And this is the data coming from an agency called AISC, especially deals in the steel structure industry, and how basically the overall project cost varies. So we are talking not the cost of design and detailing, rather why we are developing these virtual model, because the virtual model, which is of the greatest certainty on every side, gives the overall value in the life cycle, and that caters to your production planning, purchasing, fabrication, erection, and delivery mechanism. So that is the whole essence, that why do we need to have a virtual model build? So it is not only about for design and detailing and having better drawings, but how do we make use of these stuffs going forward, especially in the construction environment. And if you look at this, this is also the data published by AISC, where you say in the first phase of design, people see about 20% improvement in accuracy. In the detailing side, they reduce 70% of rework, but more on the fabrication and purchasing, they see 80% reduction in the man hours and 25% in the overall tonnage used. That is the greater impact it puts in the overall project compared to only focusing on design. So that should be the focus going forward. And this process, if you look at the centralized virtual model, is linked to practically every machinery which we require on site. So the Trimble's perspective is all about how the industry requirements are, and we always try to work with our solutions in terms of softwares, hardwares, IoT devices, AI, MI, all of that, the way the world is trying to transform in a new segment. So that's a small piece of introduction, that modular construction is the way forward, and let's look at that. Thank you, Pratap, and everyone.
Right, thanks, Harsh. Thanks for letting us know that the platform exists on the technology that we want to take forward. So so Construction World is the magazine which is now for 22 years the leading magazines distributed across 800 cities, and the company that publishes ASAP also offers digital services, much more needed in today's times. Here is a look at some of the brands that are published by us. And once we are switching to the discussion, I'd like to now run a poll with the audience, because I think just before we jump into our discussion, let's warm it up by getting some sense of the house from the audience. So the audience can see a poll there. What are the biggest benefits of precast and prefab technologies? And there are 4 options. Kindly choose one of the options, and we will be able to know online live what you believe is the biggest benefit you believe. So options are: reduces time for completion of projects, reduces cost of construction, enhances safety, increases precision. On your panel, please choose one of the options. And in a few seconds from now, we will share with the panelists what the audience feels. Just a few seconds more. Okay. So yeah, so I think clearly reduces time for completion of projects. 62% of the audience feels that that's the biggest benefit, followed by increases precision and standardization. That's 23%. So clearly everybody knows that the reduction in time in completion, and that's what's the biggest pain point of the industry. So let's get on with the discussion. Let me address the first question to Mr. Ujwal Shetty. Mr. Shetty, how modular and precast technologies have helped reduce the use of labor at your work sites, and by how much percent? Shortage of labor obviously is now a big problem. So how has that helped at your sites? Please share with us. Mr. Shetty, you need to unmute yourself.
Am I audible now?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I represent BCC Precast, which is situated in NCR. To be proper, it is in Ghaziabad. So labor shortage is not a concern here. But still, in precast technology, we can save around 65% of labor, because in conventional we used to have around 1,500 laborers, whereas in precast industry it's up almost like 500 to 600 laborers are sufficient to execute the work. So I think 35% of conventional construction is labor is sufficient in precast industry.
So you are managing to save
yes.
on labor.
We are managing on the labor, yes. And so also there is a advantage in this, reducing labor means we are at low risk. I mean to say, accidents in the site, it is a regular, it is often it happens the conventional method, but in precast it reduces a lot. When we reduce the labor to 35%, automatically risk on accident also reduces. It is one of the benefit what I talked about.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shetty. Now prefab also used all over the world, but not in the scale that it should be in India. For a country that needs to build 15 million homes every year, why are such technologies not being adopted? Mr. Nejeeb Khan, would you like to throw some light on this? Why is India, now you've been scouring the country, you've got sites all over, factories all over. What do you see is the stumbling block?
Hi, Pratap. Good afternoon, everybody. So, Pratap, let me take you a little bit about Indian, give you a little bit of brief for construction construction industry in India, which is around, I would say, $200 billion, 10% of the GDP. In that, probably 80% is come out of real estate. That construction industry, majority of the work from real estate. And in that real estate, if we look at it, 75% is residential, right? Rest of the projects are offices, everything else. Now, residential, what's happening is the faster delivery of projects was never been a challenge. I mean, that was not the intent, because they're not able to sell. If I deliver 1,000 units very fast today, they're not able to deliver that project. Now, the good news is things are changing. There are today very good project companies coming up in place, and they identify the end user, identify the sales. So for construction technology like precast, prefab, PPVC, 3D precast, all this technology to really come in play, we really need industry to change a little bit. And good news is, Pratap, it's already happening. So already today, a lot of companies wanted to deliver project fast. And secondly, now we have RERA came in place. So RERA controlling that part, you have to deliver on time. And thirdly, we have GST. Before, if you remember, 3-4 years back, you have to pay, excise duty for anything coming from the factory. Right now, that is gone. It is GST. Also today, people really, after the COVID, post-COVID situation, there is a huge shortage of labor. I mean, of course, cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai, these cities, there's a shortage, and they really think this is the way to do it. I mean, especially when you did the poll, you really found out faster constructing is one of the prime benefit. So since the industry changing towards that faster construction for majority for real estate. See, today as our company Katerra, we are constructing almost 12 million square feet office building in offsite technology. But probably residential, it's only 2 million. So there's a huge difference, So I think it's changing. I mean, today we're seeing a lot of inquiries, to at least own the running projects. Can you come up with the running project? So we're helping them converting the running project to offsite technology, at least in a combination, at least giving them toilet ports, etc., etc. So it's changing, Pratap, it's changing, and that's the reason why it has been slow.
Right. So I think one other reason is, probably the whole premium that developers got by delaying projects. That premium has gone. And now there is better premium in delivering projects fast and collecting money from the investors quicker. I think, now it has become important more than ever to complete your projects fast. That premium is gone.
80% of my customers are developers. I'm not saying anything.
All right, let's, Mr. Pareek, I think you made this presentation. So technology, I mean, how can this help in rapid construction? Now we're talking about homes, mass housing. How can this help in rapid construction, in kind of accelerating the whole move in mass housing? Harsh, can you hear me?
Sorry,
Harsh?
Yes, I can hear. See, the first and foremost thing, when you talk about mass housing, a lot of things we call as a repeatable play, and we should be having a mechanism by which the delivery of the similar type of elements can be produced faster. So I think the units which are available in a modular way, right, if they can be planned and designed well in the beginning, I think with the technologies available, we can do that thing much better in the virtual simulation. That is number one. You can have the highest level of details available in the models, which is ready to be pushed into the machinery. Because if you do not have the information available to go to the machinery, then a lot of rework a lot of rework and manual work is required, which should be avoided. I think that is where the first level the technology should come into play. The second thing is, once it is manufactured, the logistical planning and like labor and workforce management, that can be done with the available technology using IoT devices and some of the mechanisms which are available in these things. So once it becomes more as a process-oriented stuff, it certainly provides a greater level of advantage. Let's look at the present condition. We have a lot of labor issues, like in last 3 to 4 months. Now I think I heard like things are slightly improving. But the greater challenge, like how do we work in an offline mode while we are in the design phase, and how do we basically track the efficiency of our equipments and labor when they are on site? How many people are required? I think those kind of challenges can be connected with the available technologies and can be far better planned. And we have seen in certain projects recently where we have delivered some level of proof of concept, and some large general contracting firms as well as the owner operators and developers have seen that this can be achieved. So I would certainly say that technology plays a greater role in connecting the dots and making it more predictable.
Right. Okay. Absolutely. I think prior planning is key to this whole thing, because the accuracy that you can get by prior planning and designing it much before will ensure that there is no wastage. Moving over to Mr. Prashanth. Mr. Prashanth, can you give us the difference between a traditional brick and mortar method versus precast? I mean, what's the kind of technological difference does it make?
Yeah, okay. Good evening, everybody. And thanks to Construction World for giving me this opportunity. Pratap, I'll offer some initial comments and then probably answer this in a different way. When you say the conventional brick and mortar, I think even that technology has changed with more and more modern formwork systems and cranes and equipment being available. And today, if you ask, I am based in the city of Bombay. So if you ask the people of Bombay, what is the conventional method which is used, they call it the monolithic aluminum formwork system. And same is the trend at other major cities. And to just let you know, this is being adopted for all major construction companies. And when we track the progress of these kind of systems, we talk of single-digit slab cycles at all our projects. You know, maybe it is varying between 7 to 9 days or 10 days, but it is all single-digit cycle times. So if I were to compare the progress of precast with respect to that, I think beyond just the time, there are certain other things that the precast offers. You know, maybe it was covered in dots and pieces by Nejeeb and Ujwal. I would say precast would offer scalability, which I don't think a conventional system can offer, because the moment you start going into millions of square feet a year, the conventional system will just lag behind in terms of inability to mobilize labor on that scale. Then consistency of operation, repeatability. On these three fronts, I think precast would beat the conventional or the traditional systems hands down. Yeah. And also, if you see the productivity, because it is a manufacturing type process, the productivity inside the plant is so high that you can never achieve that on site. Yeah. So when I look at these two, if I were to put a simplistic answer, that I could save anything between 10 to 15% on a not so like-to-like basis, but precast definitely gives me an advantage of time, apart from the points which I have just said. These are my initial comments. Yeah.
Okay, moving over to Mr. Roy now. I think technology-driven offsite construction is critical technology be considered to construct homes more quickly and sustainable than conventional construction, particularly in disaster-prone areas. So I think now we are facing this pandemic, and you know, this was something that every city should have accounted for, but somehow we have not, and probably some lessons have been learned. But what happens in seismic and flood prone areas, Mr. Roy? How can this technology help?
Okay, I'll give the answer in two parts. First of all, you have mentioned the seismic and flood prone. So this has something to do in the design stage itself, so that we take care. But I can cite a recent example of a project that we completed in Bangladesh, Bhasanchar. It is an island where you have constructed almost 120 houses, multi-storied houses for the refugees. And that is a flood-prone area, subject to waterlogging, and then subject to also high wind. And if you look at the success, it is a 9,000 metric ton total project, and the phase 1 was completed. And even otherwise, we are more and more moving towards the additive process of manufacturing. Why I'm saying that, and don't take my word otherwise, because we have seen what has happened to the word technology, because technology is now associated with IT, and there is more technology in non-IT areas than in IT areas. So when I'm talking about additive manufacturing, it is not about only 3D printing. We have been able to make a system where all the components leaving the factory are at a 12-meter shippable length, and every component that will be fitted onto that component or the main structure will be a welded one, and it will go one shot. So the time required for actually assembling the sub-assemblies at the site get reduced to zero. We are not talking about reducing by 35%, 40%, 70%. And also we have institutionalized the concept of pod lifting. So when you lift a whole frame together. It is not you are lifting a segment and all those things. So those conventional use of even prefab and pre-engineering concepts has now moved on, And then what is happening today is that you will have to reduce the kind of workload. And I think one of the panelists has said that the workforce involvement in the site should also to reduce the accident. Now you can lift everything in unilateral singular pieces, but what it entails is you use less machineries. Typically, India has lagged, not because of the back-end design and the manufacturing. It is because at the site we don't use machineries enough. You tell me, it's still in India we use scaffolding for lifting sheets. We don't use boom lifts. We don't use cranes in any kind of construction. In a construction which is prolonged for a period of time, you use machineries. The customers are not agreeing to factor the price component. You cannot build Burj Al Arab in a conventional way. So some non-conventional thinking has to come. Some non-conventional ways and approach has to be tested out. And I think the vertical barrier, when the land becomes scarce and costly, the vertical barrier will definitely put us in the big league rather than continuing in the G+1 or G+2 kind of a concept. Having said that, in the concept where you're saying seismic India, most of the areas in the northern part is a high seismic zone. And today, if you look at, there are many standards which needs to change. Even the peak rainfall or the normal average rainfall is no longer valid. This I have been repeating in webinars, even with the steel authority, even in the government, that 150 millimeter of average rainfall has got no meaning today because the 5-minute gust is high. Even the wind standards, you look at what Amphan has done. So 180 to 200 kilometer per hour wind has got no meaning today when the wind speeds are commonly at 220 and 240. Where we have learned this? We have learned this in Philippines. You come to Philippines, we have built structures over there, domes and stadiums, where 240 millimeter wind speeds, 240 kilometer per hour wind speeds are a norm. So sooner we realize that and change our standards, it is better for us as an industry. Over to you.
Right. Thank you. That was quite informative. I think we have to be disaster ready. I think when we were talking about smart cities earlier in some other webinar, this COVID has probably taught us that something that people forgot was that we have to make cities disaster proof as well, and which requires all these kind of technologies and planning that needs to be done. Mr. Satish, I think L&T, of course, I can speak to you on any subject, but I particularly wanted to understand from you about the new solution that you all are developing for fast tracking construction of hospitals. Also, please tell us about the design for manufacturing and assembly process that you all follow and the advantages that come with that.
Yeah. You see, what is happening in India is, especially like if you see today in the pandemic and all, we have so much of skilled people and all, and we find it like, no, I told you they mobilize almost about 85 to 90% of the people, but still, they all need to be trained, and there's so many problems happening. So one of the solutions actually is the precast and the prefab. So what we are trying to do actually is, like the toilet pots, in our the housing that we are doing, we have done all the toilets are made up of pots, and we are finishing everything. All the toilets are actually completely waterproof. All the fittings are in place, and we're able to lift and then do that. You just imagine you have to build some 2,500 houses into 4 toilets, and that is one of the biggest problem in a housing actually project, because they have to be waterproof, and these are all actually done in a shop, and then they are tested, and also at least the quality is maintained, and we can develop the time. Plus, no more, I think we can do this labor arbitrage. I think we've done enough. I think it's now time to move on to the technology, and it is the precast and the prefab. See, in some of the prefab projects that we are doing, what we are also doing is we are putting the doors in place before it is erected, doors, the windows, the handrails. We're also trying to do a coat of putty and all that, so that the work at site, as everybody else is also saying, gets reduced. Because we don't have people, it is also very unsafe. If you see our safety records and all that in India is really not great. So at least once you do, even the external painting can be given here, and only you do a coat of paint or something like that, and everything is assembled. So I think these are the advantages we have. For hospitals, actually, we are trying to use PPVC. There is a problem actually in India. The DfMA norms don't allow precast in hospitals. I think my friend Nejeeb also knows actually that, we've been trying to push this, but DfMA says that no precast is allowed. I think that is something that we'll have to do, but where NDMA norms are not required, in those hospitals which are private and all, we are trying to use the precast where we can do it faster. We're trying to use this precast prefab volumetric construction so that we can finish the whole room, including all the whatever is required for the ICU, whatever is required for the bed and everything. So this is all being done. One of the advantages with actually the precast prefab is that you can actually do the planning much better. You can have the beam and all, like whatever the Tekla is saying today can be implemented. And also we can, with this beam, we are able to see the progress much faster. We can push the RFID on that and see that it is the traceability is maintained. We did it in HMRL, for all our precast panels and all. We also did it in the Statue of Unity for the bronze panels, So we are able to do it in precast. I think even in Sidco project where we are doing now, so we are using actually the 3D panels. It's not completely PPVC, but we are using the 3D panels, which has got walls on two sides, plus the slab, plus the pots. I think that is something that we are using. Definitely, it is faster. It's almost at least about time required is almost about 50%. But one of the advantages is that you should need to do the finishes. Generally, it will become really faster. Otherwise, you will do the structure, but you will spend a lot of time on finishes. One thing that everybody should take care of in precast is the waterproofing. So that is where people have to spend some more money actually. There's some projects in Mumbai and all where actually even after the thermal form or the precast, they did the waterproofing. So that because these people have a tendency, especially when you do housing for the slum rehabilitation and all, they actually pour water and then sleep and all. So this is something that we need to take care during design.
So I think you just referred on that hospital matter to Nejeeb, and I wanted to take this question to Nejeeb about DfMA. Nejeeb, what is your how do the two methodologies of the DfMA for assembly help reduce significant time and investment bottlenecks?
So Pratap, so if you really look at the definition of modular construction, what is it saying is, it's saying construction using many parts. That is modular construction. Now, DfMA is a next-gen modular construction. It's a next generation. And why did I say that? Because in a DfMA approach, designed for manufacturing assembly, it is a parametric approach. Just like Prashanth sir said, see, precast is dealing with only the structure, right? Now you still have finishers, MEP, many other aspects. If you really look at any project, if you look at residential, 50% is structure. Then you got MEP, you got finishers, all the other aspects come. So now DfMA thinking is, can we incorporate this thing into that modular approach? So when Satish sir talked about PPVC stand for pre-finished, prefabricated, volumetric construction. So here now the thinking is countries like Western countries. And one thing I can tell you, Pratap, see, if we in construction, I mean, I'm so glad that I'm sitting with the gentleman here. Our technology in India may be as equal, probably more better than the world, even though globally technology a little bit less in construction. But I'm just saying, all of these construction companies are doing outstanding technologies. Of course, we are doing in a different way. So what point I'm trying to say is, in the PPVC approach or DfMA approach, we are incorporating finishers. So if you really look at a hotel room, instead of just creating panels at the ground level before we used to do in modular construction, now we're creating entire room, either 3D casted or 2D casted, but stitched. Then put the MEP, put the finishers, then lift it. So here the most important part is coming the connection. How do we connect? When you do pieces like this, how do you connect them? And how do you connect them efficiently? So this is what DfMA is all about. Today we are designing a 23-story building with a PPVC approach. Of course, as Satish said, today DfMA stopping any hospital building, they're stopping using any components. Because of the seismic reason, because they had a bad experience when the earthquake happened. But that is a different story altogether, because you have to go and get a permission from them, from IIT Chennai, or the gentleman who written the DfMA, Mr. CVR Murthy. We have to discuss and we have to convince him that these buildings are still workable, performance. We have to do simple performance, at the lab. IIT Roorkee has a lab where we have to do the performance that even these modules will work on a seismic scenario. So I think, in my opinion, you can see a lot of companies, construction companies now moved out of modular to DfMA, PPVC, which is a precast prefab together approach. So I'm thinking of a great era coming in our construction industry.
Right. I think many companies are doing, and I also heard when I was talking to Mr. Prashanth, I was hearing that they had also explored something on 3D. Mr. Prashanth, would you like to share something on 3D?
Yeah, it's the same thing which both Satish and Nejeeb have explained. It is basically I just go a bit deeper in that. It's because either you have a 5-sided or a 6-sided 3D module, and obviously the photograph that you showed about Clementi Avenue, it had a 6-sided precast, and all the finishes. If I were to just tell briefly about that, the modules were cast in Malaysia, shipped to their workshop in Singapore, did the first round of finishes in that Singapore workshop, then pushed to the site under the hook of the crane, and then the final finishes done, and it was lifted in position. This 40-storied building was finished and handed over in almost 14 months. Yeah, that's the kind of timelines that they are talking. Obviously, there are much higher degrees of mechanization in Singapore, but I don't see any reason why we can't replicate that in India. And over a chat, I was expressing to you, Pratap, that we are also exploring the possibility of using this in Sitco. Why I say Sitco? Because even L&T has got a package, we have got a package. The point is, the moment you press the button on a precast factory, you need to utilize the capacity of the factory, and that's always very big challenge. Like suppose you get the permissions for the project in piecemeal, then whatever we had planned in the initial stages, that yes, I will do around 25,000 houses over the next 3 and 4 years, if that doesn't happen, all our financial mathematics fall by the wayside. So that is the kind of challenges that we have. And you can't just say, okay, today I will do 2 buildings, let us start the precast plant and then switch it off again, start. That would not work. So very often, while we are having these grand plans, sometimes it is kept off the track because of permissions, approvals, and various other things of this nature. So we are also exploring the possibility. In fact, we were also in discussion with Nejeeb at one point in time, that why don't we look at 3D precast at the Sitco together, even before the tender came live. Yeah. Now we are at a stage where we have been awarded the project. We are seriously evaluating that. Hopefully the next time you have a webinar of this nature, I'll be able to share more details with you. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Okay. There is another poll that we are running now. Can audience please look at their panel? Yeah, so there are 5 options here. Why has the industry been slow in adopting precast technologies? And there are 5 options given. Please choose one of them. Manual labor is perceived to be cheaper. Needs larger basic size of project. Users not aware of benefits of these technologies. Lack of trained manpower. Difficulty transporting. Please choose one of the options. I think our panelists will know what people, according to them, what is why the industry has been slow. So they know the advantage that it cuts down completion time. So Nejeeb, you will see the audience's answer, and the answer is 43% of the audience feels as users not aware of benefits of these technologies. So can you imagine, we have the industry has not been able to convey the fact that there is great benefit, what benefits that the panelists are talking about. this in real terms, in terms of cash, in terms of return on investment, how do we translate these benefits need to be converted? And so 43% are in saying that, and 21% feel that it needs, they feel it needs a larger basic size of project. So these are the two biggest reasons. And I think their manual labor is perceived to be cheaper. That's the third highest sort of voted for option. But this brings me to a question to Mr. Pareek, that how can India, we need to convey this kind of a benefit of technology, and therefore how can India focus on use of technology in terms of prefab and precast and combine it with global technology to develop sustainable solutions? Now, even though we know how it can be done, unless and until it can be translated to show what benefits it sort of provides to the users or investors, this can't go far. So what needs to be done?
I would put it in a very simplistic environment. See, we have been following up a conventional practice in construction for a very long period of time. And I think multiple forums in multiple webinars, and I think all eminent people today on the panel have spoken that what has been the challenges so far and what we have been doing it for so long. So first and foremost, time is to change, and first and foremost, mindset. A lot of people say we are not aware about the benefits, but I would call it mindset is the first thing needs to be changed, that these technologies where multiple projects, everyone have seen the benefits, is the time to adopt it. So first and foremost, mindset in adopting. Second, on the technological side, you talk about construction technology, and there are better people who can speak on like how on the side the construction technologies are helping. On the technological side, I think there are enough platforms today available which allows you to plan much better in advance and gives you the realistic view of the project, that how it needs to progress when it is on the site. And on maintaining your quality assurance and the safety measures, all those things are very much possible in the virtual environment. So you can actually simulate the overall cost of the project in all three elements, which is labor, cost, material, and equipment. So when these things are already available, it is the time to shift and I think experience it. So mindset and adoption is the most important thing, rather than like what needs to be done. And whomsoever has adopted, I think they have seen the benefit of it.
I think what has happened is that now this year we know that the government is the one that's going to be driving projects, and therefore we also need to know whether what is happening in the government side on these technologies. So I want to move to Mr. Satish, and Mr. Satish, in the present COVID scenario, can we also expect government projects to incorporate these changes and specifications to suit these technologies?
See, government has never told us you don't do precast. You see today all the metro ones, you just see 10 years back, they're all being instituted. Today everything is precast in all metro projects. So I think government never said no to this. And we also did actually, like the Sitco, for example. So during tendering itself, we offered a precast option, and they said fine. So they were technologically, it is a technologically neutral, tender. You can actually bid with either precast or you can bid with in situ. They're asking for your experience and all. I think that way government is helping. What government needs to do, Pratap, is that, see, in Singapore, if you take, they have made a rule that all toilets, will be made out of pots. It is something like that the government should say, I will do all low, what will you do toilets with pots, all the low-cost housing will be done with actually precast, prefab. Something like that have to come. They not even really reach the state. See, if you want to achieve, let us say 3,000 flats, so in 1 year, it is very difficult to achieve with conventional iron with aluminum formwork and all. And suppose, if you take 250 working days, you have to finish almost 12 flats. per day. So it is very easy to do that in precast rather than doing it in any other formwork and all. I think we need to talk to the government and tell them that look, something like what Singapore did. I think that is what actually our people have to really support. See, last time when myself, Nejeeb and all we were there was something called lighthouse projects. We went with precast. I think we also went with precast. So government has started now doing projects with precast and all. They're quite open to that. What they're not open is also like a lot of commercial buildings also they need to open to the precast. Today, at least in residential, we're all talking, especially the government ones. They're all going for the precast ones. Where the commercial buildings and the private developers, they have to go for precast. They're all a little worried, maybe the cost is, unless there are big volumes actually, the cost will be a little high. And you don't have such big volumes in, in the private industry, which are actually elite. The numbers will be less and, the cost per area will be more. And they don't do it modular because you can change, you can do many changes and all. I think it is the private developers who should also invest into the, the mass housing and come up with and support this technology. I think then only it is possible. Government on its part, I think, will do its thing.
Okay, I have got a lot of questions coming up from the audience, so I now want to move on to let us sort of provide them answers because all experts are here. So first question to Trimble, Harsh, is Trimble having a solution for PPVC or 3D monolithic modular manufacturing and erection?
Yes, so I think very short answer to that. The second one is definitely available. On the first one, we are on the verge of coming up with something very soon. Readily, it is not available, but yeah, I think we are on the verge of getting that thing out. So we will have the solution for the like pre-finished and precast.
Great. Mr. Prashanth, I think you can take this one. Somebody says that 44% saving in cement and 45% saving in steel by modular construction. He says it's difficult to believe. Would you validate?
See, actually, we spoke about the PPVC. The biggest advantage is, if I were to go through the motion of how this happens, let us assume the factory of the PPVC is within the site and not outside. Now, when we talk about wastage, see, these numbers are difficult to fix and to convince. But I would say, let us say there are 5 different kinds of tiles in a particular toilet. Just imagine you keep mix and match and send these tiles in boxes to various floors. You will have handling wastages, you will have pattern wastages, and you will have laying wastages. Now, if you have all of this central at the bottom of the whole site where the precast yard is, where you're going to fix all this, your wastages because of handling itself is going to be much less. Pattern wastage also, because your structural accuracies are much higher in a precast plant, even that can be fixed. So I would not comment on the number of 44%, etc. But I would definitely say that the savings, and both in terms of time and in terms of accuracy and in terms of ability to test post the tile is laid, is very, very high in a PPVC kind of environment as compared to inside going up to the 12th floor and trying to check, both in terms of the number of people involved and the quality of the finish which is finally done.
So Mr. Roy, next question to you. Why are pre-engineered steel buildings not coming up in the residential segment?
Okay. See, a short answer is the customer do not want it. Otherwise, it is going in the commercial segment in a very large way. The offices are getting built. People are happy staying in a brick and mortar structure rather than in a steel structure. So we have dealt and discussed with you also in a big way. The prefab construction in housing is and also steel in housing. I'll tell you, the other day I was in a meeting with the additional Secretary of Ministry of Steel. In India, typically the steel to cement ratio is almost 30 to 70, whereas all the developed countries it is the otherwise. It is 70 to 30, and the best we can go in India is 50 to 50. So even if we are in the consumption of steel at a 50% level equivalent to the other construction materials, we are good enough. That was basically more towards the increase of the steel consumption. So steel consumption will start happening when the people start accepting steel in a bigger way in all segments of usage. It is not only in housing, in real estate, otherwise, and also in the commercial space. You see, today, most of the buildings do not look a brick and mortar. It looks glass and some kind of cladding is always there. You look at the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel statue, it is full steel with a cladding. So why can't we go that way? So it is a big subject by itself. I cannot have a short answer.
Okay, Mr. Satish, one question to you is that how can civil and structural engineers reskill themselves to stay relevant in the industry post-COVID?
Yeah. No, I think, the post-COVID, there will be lots of precast, prefab, a lot of digitalization to be done and all. So I think there are many courses available and all. So I think people have to stay relevant with, being more about precast, prefab, digital, and a lot of, outside sourcing actually, rather than working aside. I think that is where the industry has to move, because the number of people, whatever we require, we feel won't be available now. Actually, one of the projects I got about 4,000 people, will require 10,000. We're afraid whether so many people will be available to work. And with COVID cases coming up, quite often, and also it is very difficult to house so many people. And you have to increase the productivity. For that, precast, prefab, and digitalization are the tools which actually we can really increase the productivity. And there actually, see, things have changed now. India actually is quite good, at least the companies with which you're now talking about. So everybody is doing a lot of innovation, and they see, like, if you see the other infrastructure, like, metros and all, they're not doing quite well with a lot of precast and all. And so I think these are things that they need to teach in colleges, and our engineers also need to stay on top of this.
Okay. Mr. Shetty, do you think the precast and prefab technology has increased demand for skilled labor to erect and handle modules?
I think actually there is a mindset of we have to change rather than anything else. They have not accepted the concept fully. Maybe it is a initial investment, or maybe the success rate, they are not through with it, with the precast and technology. So there is no scarcity of labor, nothing. Yeah, there is a scarcity of skilled labors, which we need to train gradually. Otherwise, I don't think there is a problem with the, the industry has a good scope of opportunity to develop in the prefab and precast, both.
Okay. Mr. Khan, is it easy to source new products and materials in the construction process? Are there enough sources?
It's an interesting question. Yeah, material, definitely the R&D, coming on the industry is a little lesser, especially like even on the concrete front. If you really look at it, 1 kg cement creates almost 0.8-0.9 kg CO2. So now there is a non-cementitious concrete exists, right? Instead of steel reinforcement, there is a carbon and fiber reinforcement exists. So there are lot of work is happening on material. There's a materiology discussions all over the world. In India, the challenge we have is India is very price conscious. Even though we can, some of the CO2 issues are very serious issues, because we will be building so much of building, and the CO2 emission to the environment will be so much. Even today, almost 12% of CO2 emission is coming from the construction industry, and cement being one of the biggest culprit on that front. So, but unfortunately, these are the decisions government has to put it and say that, okay, you have to use less CO2 material, right? So that, since that policy is in place, not in place, why should be anybody look at that? So, and no client is ready to pay you that value that, okay, I am using slag-based concrete. Okay, I'm using a green concrete. I'm using a lightweight concrete. So the products, the materiology, the R&D part of the products are much lesser. This is one side. We may need definitely government help to really push the limit. some kind of incentive coming from them. If anybody building a building which create less CO2, government should give them an incentive, 0.5 more FSI or anything like that. So it really helps.
Mr. Prashanth, one last question. Currently, precast prefab methods are priced about 15 to 20% more than the conventional methods. The latter allows flexibility of progress based upon customer needs. So how does one balance? I think the question is, how do you balance the benefit versus cost?
Yeah, so this, I think right at the beginning of the project, you need to decide, maybe plan A, plan B, plan C like that, and then have the rollout plan in such a way. See, for example, I'm just giving an example of a very different this one. Suppose you are thinking of a hollow core slab. You can have multiple beds ready, but you will start operating them only as and when required when you want to scale up. But the problem with the precast system is that the ability to scale down is a very costly exercise. So if this is the challenge that we have, that suppose you want to go on a particular project with precast and you have made all the plan and equipment purchase based on that, then you need to definitely go that way. Otherwise, what you have planned is not what you're going to achieve. So it's very important that you stick to a plan. You could have subsets within that, okay, there could be a plan A, which is full capacity. Plan B could be 80% capacity. You can work out this what if cases, but you cannot have a choice that let me have a precast plant which is producing 100 and now let me see how it will work when it is zero production. It can't be like that. So there will be a break-even size, and that's the biggest challenge in India. We start with these grand plans, and then there is something which happens on the way. There's an obstacle for whatever reason, rightfully or wrongfully. There's a reason, and then you're across a stumbling block, and then you are stuck for good. And then all the opinions subsequent to that, the analysis will be made. Because you went for precast, that's the reason you have fallen into this position. So it's not the system which is at fault, but the rest of the opportunity which has evolved that way, that is at fault.
So that brings us to the end of this program.
Be smiling and agreeing with me, but maybe he can add something.
You want to add something?
No, I agree. Ultimately, it depends on the size, and when you have the government project, as you rightly said, suppose we are not sure whether it will happen in one place or it will happen in two places. So it depends. So that is a call that we have to take. So and many we are actually betting that Cisco will do best, and then we are going at the precast actually. But we have taken down the requirement also, anticipating all the delays because they are handing out to us in parts. So
there is one more. Pratap, I would add one more thing. See, one of the challenges in India, there are very limited players. And when I say limited players in this industry is because I'll tell you why I'm saying that. One, the cost of capex and the cost of funds in India is relatively high as compared to rest of the countries. When I say the more developed world, I'm just giving you a scenario the way I understand. Second, the cost of energy. Suppose you take the price of diesel in India versus the price of diesel in Dubai versus price of diesel in, I'm just saying UK. If you see, the price of diesel is not very different, but the cost per square feet of the selling price at each of these places are very different. And the cost of crane is the same at all these places. And if you look at the PPVC and the precast element, etc., you require special large size capacity cranes. Now, these are not the cranes which is available off the shelf, nor it is available on rent. So it is all subject to procurement. Suppose you have an evolved industry, let us say like in Singapore or in Dubai, where these are available practically on rent, then companies like us or like L&T, we can always choose, okay, we got a project, we want to scale down, let us off hire, and then it is useful for some other job. For example, PPVC, each module would weigh anything between 20 to 25 tons. Now you want to lift that at 20 to 14 storied high, you require obviously special cranes. Now when you pick up these kind of cranes, these are special cranes which are being purchased. And if it is not used elsewhere and you want to scale down the project, this is our cost which are going to hit the company. But whereas if these cranes are fungible between, let us say, an infrastructure project versus a residential project versus some other project, then the cost of crane is only the duration that it is on the site. These are some of the things where the vendor base for equipments on rental can actually help the industry in that sense.
But let me also put to the panel the fact that there is no proper standardization of various elements We would take road construction, take housing. I mean, you know, everybody is customizing to his own, maybe the state, maybe the, you know, the builder, the developer. So as long as standardization doesn't come in at least some basic elements, the possibility of growing this industry becomes limited, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, in Russia and all, when I was in Russia, housing and all, there are standards, and each panel there is a standard design. You need not design. So if you go for a house, they'll give so many panels which are all available in there. You know, it was called some snip or so, you know, as per the Russian standards and all. So something like that, you know, India should go, especially for the affordable housing. So then only the cost will come down and everything will come down. So we Indians want everything differently, like Maggie sauce. That's the problem with us.
All right, I think we have overshot our time. I must thank all to begin with thanking Tekla for being the sponsors for this. Mr. Prashanth, Mr. Alakesh Roy, Mr. Khan, Mr. Shetty, Mr. Satish, and Mr. Pareek, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with all our over 1400 participants. And that brings us to, I hope all of you all stay safe. All participants, thank you for joining us. Please stay safe and stay healthy.